Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Spoilers, coming to you with our new review of the brand new Christopher Nolan film, Interstellar. I am here tonight joined by a bunch of people of the AMC Movie News crew, but before we get into anything, I want to warn you. As the title suggests, AMC Spoilers, we are going to go into spoilers about the film. So if you have not yet seen Interstellar, I highly recommend that you just add this video to your favorites list and come back and watch it after you've seen the film. Or if you're one of these people that doesn't mind spoilers at all, then feel free and enjoy.
Because we're really going to spoil this film, right?
Yeah, we're pretty much going to spoil the film. So sitting, first of all, over here is Mr. John Schnepp.
What's going on?
Miss Alicia Malone.
G'day.
And, of course, over there in the end, Mr. Dennis Zen.
Hey, everyone.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the positives about the film. We're going to go into our negatives, our overall impressions of the film, and we're going to give it a score out of 10. So let's start off with the good stuff. Let's start with the things that we enjoyed about this film. Dennis, let's start with you. Your positives about Interstellar.
Well, I mean, visually, it's absolutely fantastic, you know, just seeing all the different scenes in space. And it's weird, though. For me, the whole time I'm watching this film, you know, we know Chris Nolan. Everyone knows his work. A lot of people love his work. But one of the things you don't think about Chris Nolan is emotion or touchy-feely. And I kind of like that he went somewhere where he usually doesn't go. Because a lot of people, one of the criticisms that people have of him is that he's kind of cold. But this one was not cold at all. And there was a lot of emotion. There's some stuff that I'm sure we'll talk about that didn't work in that department, but I like that he went for it. Like it's an ambitious project, and so the fact that he tried to go and cover all, he didn't do it, obviously. I don't think anyone can say, oh, it's a perfect film or anything like that, but he tried to go there.
Yeah.
What about you, Alicia? Some of the things you enjoyed about the film?
I really appreciate the ambition. I think these days it's so rare to get a $165 million original concept on the big screen. And he tried to put a lot in there, and I appreciated it. I liked how optimistic it was. I like how in the film the characters are looking up into the sky, wondering about humankind. And then I looked around the cinema when we're watching it, and everyone was looking up at the cinema screen in awe. He creates these movies as cinematic experiences that you have to see on the big screen. IMAX 70mm looked incredible. I like how, he doesn't do a lot of emotion like this before, but he does try to ground high concepts with some kind of emotional character or relationship, and here it's very much the father and daughter. I'd say it's probably his most personal film, even though it is his biggest. So I really loved the look of it and just what he put on the screen. It was incredible. I saw it and I went, wow.
Schnapp, what about you? Some things you liked about Interstellar?
Yeah, a little bit like what Alicia was talking about is that he took a very large concept, a big idea, which is like mankind, Earth is dying, we need to find a brand new Earth, and grounded it by making it the story of a guy who wants to get back to see his daughter before she dies, because he's dealing with the theory of relativity and all these like high concept things that are kind of explained for the layman in certain sequences in this movie, and you're still like, can they play that scene again? Oh wait, we're moving forward. It's some really, some heavy stuff. We're talking about fifth dimensions and, of the ability to transport through time, through gravity, through time, and some big ideas that are, I think, grounded in a way by keeping that human touch. Whether or not it was 100% successful, we'll talk about later, but I think it was great that he did this giant space epic where we basically go to all these different planets, but they're grounded by him and his desire, the main character, to get back home. So
I think you guys all touched on the humanity of the film, and Dennis, you pointed out, and I agree with you incredibly, that this feels in many ways, even though it's probably his most sci-fi-ish film, it is the most human film to me. There's a great line in there talking about the fifth dimensions where he's talking to Tars, and it says, the fifth dimensional beings created a three-dimensional environment so we could understand the fifth dimension better. Well, they're doing a poor job.
Yeah.
That was a really good line in it. This is an experiential movie, in the sense that not only are the visuals great, And a little bit of a plug here. If you watch it in an AMC Prime theater,
Oh,
which
I
we
wanna
just watched
see
it
it.
again in an AMC Prime theater with the subwoofers and everything, those speakers built in the seats. As they're hitting the atmosphere, and you feel your chair rattle with them. It
Amazing.
immerses you in the environment. Christopher Nolan does, I believe, not only is it the best human film that he's done, he drew me into the experience more than any other of his films before. Now, not to say that this is his best film. I do not believe it's even close to his best film. But it did do a great job pulling me into the experience of the movie. It's grand scale in one sense. I'll talk in my negatives about how it's not sometimes. But once we get into space, you feel the enormity of space.
Yeah.
They do a great job, even though they use very confined environments. You feel the enormity of what it is they're trying to do. So that's fantastic. Performances very strong across the board. How good is Jessica Chastain?
Oh, she is fantastic.
It's like seriously, once she comes into the film, she kind of takes command of the film in many ways. And of course, Matthew McConaughey. This movie doesn't work if it's not for the performance that he gives. The Matt Damon showing up and
Yeah.
his role. We were talking about how suddenly now some people asked on AMC Mailbag, which we addressed, why don't they tell us who Matt Damon is? It just remains, unspecified who his character is. Well, now we know, because we know in the movie they say, well, we got to decide this big crux in the film. Do we go to this planet or this doctor's planet? And if they said Matt Damon is playing this doctor, then you know where on earth they're going for
I didn't even know he was in the film at all.
Right.
Oh, really?
No.
I didn't either. I didn't. He wakes up and it's like, that's Matt Damon. you know?
Yeah, it was such a nice surprise.
Oh,
And-
here's a question. Honestly, I didn't know. I turned to Ann beside me. Who was the voice of TARS?
I don't know either.
I don't even know if this is for sure, but it sounded like William Fichtner to me. But
That's who I thought
I
it was.
don't know, but it could be
No,
someone else.
You are dead right. Can we fact check who is the voice of TARS? But I am willing to bet the house that you're right, because
TARS was
Christopher
great.
Nolan has worked with him before.
Yeah.
I think you are absolutely right.
I loved
TARS
TARS.
was
Yeah,
fantastic.
He was
So
one
did
of my
I, too.
favorite parts. It was the comedic relief.
And we were saying
You
a bit
know?
2001 as
Yeah,
well. Like
he was
he's very much a monolith.
moving, living monolith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait for the action figure.
Okay, and this goes into my last positive that will connect to what my negatives are, but this is a huge one. I have not seen a film since 2001 that felt as ambitious as Interstellar was. It very much gave me a 2001 feel, which no other film has been able to do.
Yeah, 2001
This-
and also The Right Stuff, I thought.
Yeah,
as well.
and a
Yeah.
mixture of a couple of other, like for
Contact
flavor.
and
Yeah.
for me, Sunshine. I felt a little bit of Sunshine.
There's a little
in
bit of
there.
that as well. To me, what is more important than how good the film is or not good is I believe this is an important film. And here's
Yeah.
why. Christopher Nolan not only, I think, broke barriers and his own barriers by pushing his own barriers, like Dennis, you mentioned that we see him stretching himself with trying to get more into the emotion, and he did it in spades. But you said it, he swung for the fences in this movie.
Yeah.
He shows, in filmmaking terms, a bravery that I don't think we've seen out of him yet, that I don't think we've seen out of very many filmmakers, especially ones that have the commercial success that Christopher Nolan does. The ambition he shows in this film, I
Yeah.
think, is really important to hopefully give hope and give some gusto to other filmmakers to take bigger
I
chances,
agree.
to
I
take bigger
agree.
risks. Now, whether he succeeded
I know.
on all those big swings, that's another story altogether. But regardless of how good or not good I think the film is,
Yeah.
I applaud Christopher Nolan
Me
for
too,
this thing.
because anytime you make a film where you leave it and you want to discuss it with your friends, I think that is so smart. If you want to delve into it, you create theories around it. He did that with Inception as well. He always makes these really smart, intelligent movies that play with time and perception, and I just really appreciate it. It's rare these days, and he
Oh,
has the
it's so
power
rare.
to make these kind of movies on a big scale.
No, that's another positive thing is like the weight he put on time and showed like through a plot device how important it is. I mean,
Yeah.
you can think about how important it is in the movie, but you can relate it to your own life. Like, wow, if that's how long that's going to equate to, like,
Uh-huh.
if you think about
That
just your
scene
life.
was amazing
yeah.
when they came back from the water planet and they realized they'd been gone for such a long
23
time.
years.
That
But
was
it also
incredible.
it goes back to some of the time issues that he was dealing with Inception.
Mm-hmm.
Like this dream lasts longer than the second dream, then the deeper dream is only one day, and then years pass when you're in the fourth quadrant of dreaming. Similarly, like, oh, if you go to this planet, we're going to lose 7 years every hour. It had these kind of timetables that were a little similar. And also in this movie, I think he's defining his style. I mean, he's a cinematic director, and the way he decides to like lock you down to like 4 shots while McConaughey's going through Gargantua, and we're like locked onto the side of the ship, then we're on him, and then we're behind him, and we see crazy stuff flying at you. It by limiting the decision making of the camera, it allows you to actually experience it in a more realistic way, because we live in a time where you can do CG up the ass, you can do anything you want, you can rotate around that, you could do all these amazing 3D things, and instead he locks it down into a realistic camera perspective. Not a lot of moving tracking shots, a lot of lockdown shots, which translates into a visceral experience, which translates to with McConaughey when he ejects. There's a lot of sequences in there that are really brave to take those kinds of chances on such a big film. But it's also, you see him establishing his style. Similarly with Inception, when they get to the fifth dimension, it felt like a Christopher Nolan version of the fifth dimension. Like just the way that everything is laid out, it's physical, and it's not like spacey and weird. And like, imagine like, if you're, hey, it's like it's the fifth dimension, but from Doctor Strange, there'd be weird eggs floating, and this is just very physical. And you're like, oh, he's playing it like it's a, like it's a string, and it's like, it just makes sense. So the way he mapped out the ability to move through time visually is pretty fantastic.
There's also, I think, what I would call a finite metaphor in the film about time. Like they're talking about time in another way. The sense I got, an underlying message from the film is time is gone like that. Like, McConaughey and Hathaway go down the planet, they're back and 23 years has passed, but one of the messages I got out of that is a reminder that time does fly that fast.
Yeah, and time with your family.
Yeah.
It's sweet.
Which I thought was, very brilliantly done on that way. And all right, so when you are we talked about swinging for the fences. When you are a hitter who hits a lot of home runs and you swing for the fences, you will strike out sometimes. So Dennis, let's start with you again. Where did this film not quite hit its mark for you?
I think all the setup to before they leave for space, I think, was a bit contrived, in the sense of like Matthew McConaughey's character, he's this awesome pilot. They don't know where he is, but I know they used the ending to say like how he got there, but like I just don't buy that. I just feel like it's a little forced. I think they would know where he is. If he was one of the best pilots of NASA, it's not like you go around here and like you'll find a NASA pilot anywhere. The government knows where they are. So I just felt like that kind of device. I don't
He's
think
got kids in school. The government knows.
I don't think they needed that. They could have just come out and just, hey, we need you for this, And I felt like they needed to put more weight and emphasis on the world dying, I mean, they kind of mentioned it for like him personally, but I think if we got maybe more of a global scale of what was happening across the entire world, we'd feel like, oh, he has to get into that, because they didn't really lead up to him leaving. He was just like, I'm out of here. See you later.
3, 2, 1, lift off.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that could have been built up more.
Yeah.
What about you, Alicia?
Some of the emotional scenes felt a little manipulative to me, like he was really trying to put the emphasis on the relationship, and sometimes it worked and sometimes I was like, that's too much. And towards the end, when he finally gets back to his daughter and then, okay, I'm off again. And he doesn't even say anything to his grandchildren, great-grandchildren.
Like, hey,
he just
stop.
goes like, hey, daughter, okay, off I go to find Anne Hathaway. And it tries to do so much that some of the science stuff and trying to explain everything just went over my head. I thought it was just too much exposition at times.
Oh, you mean the explaino scenes?
Yes.
Yeah, where it's like there's no music and it's just like cut of Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway doing this like, no, what the relativity means is you're like, oh my God!
Yeah.
I phased out at some point during that. And
Yeah,
I
me
was
too.
like, I was invested and then I became uninvested. It's show, not tell. It's it's cinema, and he did a couple of those things where it's like we had that extended scene in a school where he's like, your son is going to be a farmer, and it's like they could have shown that visually. This is a movie, and instead they had like a 5-minute scene in the school talking about their grades and stuff. And I know it was like trying to establish the son later when he becomes a grown adult, but it really didn't work. It was like, no, the son hates farming. You know, it's like he's angry. He's doing stuff that his dad wanted him to do,
Right.
but there wasn't enough time also spent on some of those characters. And yes, they could have branched out a little bit more, but what they did is they specifically stayed on target with either him or his daughter. There were no other outside scenes. It was always through their lens. You know what I mean? So if we're watching something about the world dying, it's through the McConaughey character or through his daughter's character. So it worked and it didn't work. I mean, for me, emotionally, I like that they tied it together, like with the, him wanting to get back because he didn't want to miss his daughter growing up. And eventually he's the reason, and his daughter is the reason that mankind survives, but it's played down. I think emotionally for me, the scenes that actually I got emotional about were when they were in space.
Yeah.
Right.
Were the epicness of this final journey, which eventually we're going to have to do on Earth. Eventually, I'm not saying, we can correct things that are happening bad with like global warming now if we get wise about it, but eventually our sun is going to die and we're going to have to journey off somewhere. And hopefully we got a couple of wormholes hanging out, We're going to get on that wormhole thing. But yeah, I mean, that was really so beautifully shot. It emotionally, I felt it, It's like, I felt like, wow, this is really like, eventually someone's going to experience this, and it was really well done.
My biggest criticism about the film is kind of a generic thing to say, but I feel like Christopher Nolan brought together all these incredible pieces, the great experience, the visuals, the emotional tones, these grand concepts, right? So you brought all the best ingredients into the kitchen, but I feel like the recipe didn't gel right. The pieces didn't quite fit together right. Here's a good example of that. Like there was this one scene you're talking about in the school, talking to the whatever the one dude was. I don't know if he was a principal or a military guy or a government guy, whatever. And the teacher, and they're having this conversation. I get it. The purpose of the scene was not about where the kid goes to college. The purpose of that scene was to communicate and let us as the audience understand more about the Matthew McConaughey character. He's completely the antithesis about where the world is at right now. He believes we should be explorers. He believes we should be embracing our discoveries and and science, not for the sake of science, but science as a type of exploration, because that's the heart of him is. Okay, fast forward a couple of minutes, and then they had the exact same scene with him and Jonathan Lithgow sitting on the
his
thing.
father-in-law.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Just once again, another scene just to communicate that he really doesn't think, we should be looking up at the stars, not looking at our place in the
Mankind
dirt.
doesn't belong here. They had that line like 3 times in the movie. We belong. We
I mean,
just because we can't.
there were
grew up
lines in the
here.
movie where you could tell they're almost like written for the trailer. You know what I mean? Like they're not for the movie, but so that they could just put that in the trailer as an overall theme for the movie.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And in that sense, narrative-wise, I felt like very speed bumpy. Like I'm on this great scene, and then it goes to the next scene, but it felt like really jarring getting into the next scene.
Yeah, I agree.
As we go through, and then when we get to the end, I don't know. It almost felt like, I understand sometimes filmmakers have to throw in a plot device. It's like, I can't figure out a way to make this work. Plot device, just accept that it's a plot device. But that whole thing's like, wait a minute. He, using Morse code, he was able to put into a watch the entire collective data about the heart of a black hole? Really?
A lot of tapping.
That's
a
a
lot.
lot of tapping. It's like, wait, if he can physically manipulate the environment, just go, hey kid, wave a book at her. Like if he can physically manipulate it.
Here's one that makes even less sense. Holly brought this up because I went to use the bathroom and I missed this scene where he shows up as a ghost to remind himself that he's got to go do this stuff, but he's like telling his daughter to stay.
Yeah, stay.
Tell his daughter to tell himself.
Yeah, tell himself to stay. Yet he also told himself to go
Yeah.
to NASA.
Right, yeah.
So where was the version of himself in that bizarre fifth dimensional? I wanted to see where McConaughey turns and looks at himself like doing that on another, I'm ahead of you doing this other thing, like 4 other McConaugheys.
Like, why would he give the coordinates to NASA? If
Exactly. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's
If he
like
didn't
stay
want
or
him to
go.
go.
And does he create the wormhole? Who are they? Because he's like, oh, they are us. Now I'm confused.
But also in
Yeah, it was
McConaughey's
confusing.
time, It was only a few days ago, because it takes into consideration
Right.
the relativity and his
Yeah.
sleep on the trip to Mars. It was in McConaughey time. It was only a couple of days ago
Right.
that he had that experience in the bedroom of her saying, "Look, it says stay." So why would he just give himself the same message that he knows he ignores?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that made
Makes
no
my
sense.
mind
And they
go
don't show
meldy.
him
Yeah.
giving the message that he didn't ignore, that he did, like, oh, the NASA thing is the alien, that's me. When did I do that message? Oh, it's the other McConaughey. Some Twin Peaks stuff is going on.
Yeah.
Where's Bob in the fifth dimension? You know?
And I think I would have felt better about the film. One of the things that did not work for me is the whole concept of the fifth dimensional beings, right? Because the trailers promised us, and I understand why they didn't give it away in the trailers, I do.
Right.
But from the trailers, to me, what I got as a sense from the movie, we're actually looking up at these giant Interstellar posters here,
Yeah, they're
was that a part of this movie was about the unlimited potential of the human spirit and what we can do and we can accomplish. But at the end of the day, what the movie was is there are these benevolent fifth dimensional beings out there who are just going to do it for us. And I couldn't help but wonder, sitting through the film, like whether that those fifth dimensional beings are actually us 5 millennia from now and we've evolved to that, or they're another type of being or whatever it is that lives in the heart of a black hole, whatever. If they could create a wormhole, a spherical wormhole out by Saturn for us, couldn't they just come and say, hey, yo, hop in my bus, my space bus.
Right.
We will take you to a new home.
It's a giant circular wormhole, but it's also La Bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks weird, but just get in.
I know, but I liked that it was all about love transcending
Right.
dimensions. I thought that was really sweet.
I thought they laid it on a little thick though,
No.
with the love. I mean, I like the thread of it through
Yeah.
the whole movie, but they really had to lay it on
Love.
thick.
Let's talk about the planets though, because it's
Oh,
like
they
that to
looked
me was some of
amazing.
my favorite parts, where they're flying and they run into a cloud.
Yes,
Frozen
and ice
clouds.
clouds.
That's
There's
cool.
some pretty
Cloud.
amazing stuff. Or the
And the
it's-
water
what's
planet
that
with the
mountain? Yeah, it's a
huge
giant wave. And how
wave.
frightening
I wish they hadn't
that
ruined
is.
that in the trailer though, because I knew that was coming because I saw it in the trailer.
I didn't
But you
see
know
that
what?
trailer.
They did ruin that part, but they don't show what happens. After. That's a
Yeah.
giant wave.
Yeah.
And then being in a theater on the big
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah.
Experience.
But
Yeah.
I wish I had just
Whoa.
seen it
Scary.
like blind or whatever. But I think one of my favorite action sequences was when they try and dock the
Ah,
space
and
station.
Oh, yeah.
spinning.
Spinning, and they have to get right into rhythm
Yeah.
with it. And
That
go
was
up.
so
Yeah,
tense.
exactly.
I was on the edge of my seat. And
Yeah.
I like the Matt Damon cameo being a surprise, but I thought that was a little much, that he became
The
evil
villain, he became
Yeah.
a villain.
and that
We didn't
his
need
name
that.
was Man, so it's like
Did you
mankind
see
is
him
evil.
twirling his mustache at the very end before he exploded?
Yeah, it was a little too much.
Yeah.
There was something that I found fascinating about that love speech that Hathaway gives. I agree. I'm sitting there watching the film and I'm believing this is a little thick.
Yeah.
Maybe we're supposed to go to that planet, even though it doesn't make sense, because we're supposed to follow love. Okay, that was a bit thick. But I remember Hathaway talking. We sent Amy Rose to go to the jungle for this one. And I remember Hathaway saying something really cool to Amy Rose. She said, the thing about my character is that she is a person of both faith and science. And she understands that these two things aren't juxtaposed against each other. These are things that we really have to have in order to understand both sides well. And when she said that, if I didn't hear her say that in the interview, I don't think I would have had the appreciation for that scene as I did. They still laid it on too thick.
But I thought Chastain's character, Murph, was the same in that she believed things that she couldn't quite explain, but at the same time, she was a scientist.
Yep.
I thought that was
It's not
interesting.
that I didn't believe her character. I just believe they especially because of what happens in the end, which
Yeah.
is the planet that she wanted to go to in the first place out of love was the one that's going to save mankind.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're basically saying, yes,
Love
is
saves
love is the
all.
answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Loves the
and
answer.
Okay, so Murph, Jessica Chastain, the Jessica Chastain Murph, because we had 3 Murphs in the movie, is standing in the bedroom that she has not been in now for 20 years, and is thinking about that day she kind of scribbled out "stay." Oh my God, it's you, Dad. You're here. What? you got that out of that? Really?
Yeah,
I
she
don't
is
know.
really smart.
Oh,
No,
that's
no.
true. She's
That's a
incredibly
lot of
brilliant.
faith.
Yeah.
That is a lot of faith.
But like I said, all these things I'm talking about, the reasons I didn't work. These are things that didn't work to me, anyway, just me personally. To a lot of other people, that may have worked, and that's great. But they didn't work to me because Nolan was being so bold
Yes.
and so brave and
Yeah.
swinging for the fences. And I don't lament that he did that at all.
No.
I'm so glad he did it. it is worth it. Even if he swings and misses on a couple of strokes, it was still worth it because it was such a bold, brave movie.
rare.
Like stretching, it's not just your popcorn tripe excitement film, although there is great excitement in it. And it's like, so you know what? I sit back and go, okay, fully acknowledging that those things did not work for me. I'm not going to be a blind fan, stick my head in the sand, pretend they don't exist. They do. But I also understand they're that way because he was thinking beyond. It is the people who get lost are the ones who are brave enough to explore. And I feel like Nolan lost his way a couple times, but that's because he's the guy with the guts to go into the uncharted territory.
Agreed.
And try this stuff. But going back to what you said earlier again, it's really cool seeing a director as established, as successful, both financially and creatively, as Christopher Nolan, still saying, I want to grow and get better, and I'm going to do things I've never done before yet, and I'm going to achieve human emotion, and I'm going to achieve this, and I'm going to achieve that, and it just makes me go, okay, while Interstellar didn't completely work for me, it makes me look forward to Christopher Nolan's next film even more.
He boldly goes where other filmmakers do
Fear
not
to tread.
dare. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked about positives, we've talked about negatives, and our explanation of the negatives. Let's actually get down to the brass tacks of giving this thing a score out of 10, which is going to be tough, I'm going to tell you. But Schnepp, let's start with you. Brief description and your score out of 10 and why.
Well, I just saw it like you today, and lot to talk about afterwards. I talked with Holly about it. I talked with Alicia about it. Now we're talking about it. It's a really fun film to discuss for the positives and the negatives.
Yeah.
And that to me is true cinematic. The making of a good classic is something that is derisive to a certain degree, and people are going to have the pros and cons for different reasons. I wouldn't call this a masterpiece by any means yet. We'll know that in 20 years if it stands the test of time. But cinematically, I think Christopher Nolan is really getting his look down,
right,
and his style down, and the way he makes films. Now it's like I could see a film, and maybe even with Inception, it wasn't yet like, oh, it's a Christopher Nolan film. This is, now I could say this is in the pantheon of his other films as a Christopher Nolan film. Whether or not the story works 100%, and whether or not I was emotionally invested in what I should have been invested in,
right,
there's some storytelling problems and some dialogue problems. But overall, I found it to be quite an innovative, action-filled drama, So with that being said, I'll give it a 7.5.
Oddly enough, I'm going to give it the exact same 7.5.
That's what I was thinking too.
This is first of all, just as a movie-going experience, this is a movie-going experience. This is one you're going to want to see, regardless of how much you think you enjoy or don't enjoy it when you walk out. It's one you're going to want to see. I think you pointed it out first. This is a film, regardless of what you think about it, you're going to be talking about this film 4 days, which is in and of itself. And in the weaknesses of the film, and there are a few, like I said, I'm not going to stick my head in the sand. The weaknesses of the film, I can't think of one that wasn't caused by grand vision. And when you make a mistake because you were going for something grander and something bigger, there comes along an appreciation with that. So, yeah, it had some weaknesses, had some great strengths, all that kind of stuff. For me, it ends up being an enjoyable experience. I can't wait to see his next film, especially now with this film under his belt, with the lessons he's learned from this one. I mean, we are going to have to keep our eyes on what he does next, really, really close. And I'm going to also, like you, I'm going to give it a 7.5.
I was also actually thinking 7.5, no lie, because Christopher Nolan, the biggest magic trick he pulls is that you have to see his movies multiple times.
Yes.
I want to see Interstellar again, and then I think with time and distance I might feel differently about it, but he brings awe to the cinema, and he makes these really thought-provoking movies, and that is what movies need today when you're competing with small screens and downloads and things you can watch on your phone. This is a film that is such a great cinematic experience, and I appreciated the ambition. I know some things didn't quite work, but like you were saying, at least he's trying something.
Yeah,
that
most people are too afraid to try.
Exactly. So I'm giving it 7.5. I can't wait to see it again.
Dennis.
I'm going to give it an 8, and I'm definitely going to see it again. And that number may rise or it may fall depending on how if the strengths are even better to me the second time or the weaknesses are worse. But I feel like the highs are so high in this movie, and the lows aren't that bad. I mean, they're there. There are definitely weaknesses, but they aren't like so bad that it ruined the enjoyment of the film for me. It was more what you said, where it kind of starts and stops a bit. I think that was one of the things with the pacing of the film. Like, you'd have these high highs, and then you'd come down, and like it would just kind of sit there for a little while. So I felt like, I think pacing-wise, it could have, especially in the first 30 or 45 minutes leading up to the launch, I think they could have built that up better. I know they're trying to establish that father-daughter relationship, but I think they could have broadened that out a bit more.
Oh, you just reminded me, too, of something I should have mentioned right off the top. I think one of the things they did not do really well, I understand what Nolan was going for. Nolan wanted us to stay focused on the McConaughey point of view, that his concern is his family. Okay, I get that. But as an audience member, we are supposed to understand the peril of the human race and the planet.
Yeah.
And all we ever saw were cornfields. Like, we never got out of that one small town in a cornfield.
Flip dirt on the table. That's what
That's it.
Table.
Yeah.
I wish the film had done a better job making me feel the struggle and what it is he's leaving the planet for. And because they never emotionally made me feel the stakes and feel what's really happening. All the billions of people whose lives are at risk, when we only see a town of about 30 or 40 at a baseball game, it made me feel a little bit disconnected.
Can I just say that Michael Caine is immortal? Like, they have these time jumps where it's like, you were 7 and now you're 43, yet Michael Caine is the same exact age, only has a nose plug.
He was in a wheelchair.
He was in a wheelchair.
He was in a
And the
wheelchair.
other scene, he has I have an oxygen helper.
He didn't even bother to change his hairstyle.
I know, he
He's
looked
still
exactly
parted
the
in
same.
spot. Oh well, whatever. Okay, so we got 7.5, 7.5, 7.5, and an 8. So folks, really, we want to know what you thought of Interstellar. Make sure you jump in the comments section and tell us your thoughts, what you liked about it, what you thought could have been better, and where you agree with us, where you disagree with us. Whatever. Let's just talk about the movie, because that ultimately is the biggest strength of Interstellar, is the talkability about it.
Yeah, isn't that
afterwards,
great?
right?
All of
You
us
can
want to
debate.
see it again. I want to see it again.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's awesome.
So that'll do for us. I want to thank, of course, down there in the end, Mr. Dennis Zen. Dennis, where can people find you online?
You guys can find me on Twitter @ThinkHero, on Instagram Dennis.tzeng.
And of course, sitting right beside me is Miss Alicia Malone. Alicia, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook @Alicia Malone.
On the other side of me here, Mr. John Schnepp. Schnepp, where can people find you online?
you guys can find me at Twitter and Instagram, just @JohnSchnepp and @TDOSLWH.
And you guys can find me online on all the various social media networks, just @JohnCampia. Thanks a lot for joining us for this installment of AMC Spoilers. Make sure you look at our very next one, which is our spoiler review for Big Hero 6. Can't wait to bring that to you. So for the whole crew here, my name is John Campia for AMC Movie News. And until next time, bye-bye.
Hey everyone, if you liked this video, click that thumbs up button and make sure to subscribe to our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. It's free and helps you stay up to date with all the latest movie news, as well as our daily AMC movie talk show. Also, make sure that you follow us on Facebook and Twitter to stay up to date with all of our special promotions, contests, and prize giveaways.